Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Disc Golf Preview Show of the United States Women's Disc Golf Championship. This episode is going to be presented by Third Wave Coffee. If you haven't checked out Third Wave Coffee yet, first off, what are you doing? It's actually my brother's coffee shop. They're committed to ethical and sustainable sourcing for all of their coffee that they roast, and they have over 20 single-origin coffees from all over the world in stock right now. Plus, they just released a new Bogey Roll blend this year that's tasted and approved by myself, Trevor, and Connor, and it's perfect for all of you who are looking to dip your toes in the specialty coffee scene. For our listeners, they're offering you 20% off your order with the code DISCGOLF. That's one word, DISCGOLF. So head over to third-wave.coffee and pick something up today. Again, that's use code DISCGOLF to get 20% off at third-wave.coffee. They're playing a new course this weekend.
New course, the Regulator.
Down in Burlington, North Carolina. It looks like it's going to be kind of a mixed course, but have some true North Carolina wooded holes.
Looks very Carolina wooded.
There is definitely some open holes, and there's some holes to play like out of the woods into the open, across some fields, stuff like that. But when you get to the woods, it looks, I watched the flyovers this morning. There's some thick holes out there, some true Carolina woods golf. It's definitely scoreable out there, though, with some of the pars leaning towards a little bit of the softer side. There's a few like 600-ish foot par fives that even in the woods, those will still play scoreable. And I was looking at the practice rounds that players were putting up out there. And so based on just that data and the flyovers, I feel like the winner will probably be the first person or the person that comes in around 25 under is kind of what I'm guesstimating. We haven't seen this course played yet. So this is just based on the practice rounds that were posted and then watching the flyovers, because there is some OB, but the OB seems to be like not super in play on several holes, just kind of something to make you think about where it can definitely come into play. And then there are some holes where it's very much in play, like behind the basket. And on that hole, I forget what hole it is, like a 250 foot, slightly downhill basket. Directly behind it's the Creek OB. And if you go in the Creek OB, you go to a drop zone instead of playing where you cross. So that's a very interesting
I'd be interested in
hole shape as well.
25 under. Like, I don't know if we've seen an FPO winner come in that low yet this year.
I'm not sure.
Even for 4 rounds. I'm actually kind of curious about it.
The other thing I noticed with this course was there were several tricky greens. So there were several greens on hillsides and like built out platforms with drop offs next to it. So approach shots will be crucial here. Angle control, speed control, and of course, putting. When you get onto these greens, there's a lot of opportunity for missed putts to roll away, or if you sail one to end up, looking at a 40-foot comebacker up the hill. Not a position you want to be in. So the player that can really have good angle control, have good touch, and make their putts will be putting themselves in a great position. It doesn't seem like this is a distance favored course.
Yes.
There's definitely some holes that there's advantages to it, but it's not like Ella Hansen, Holland Hanley, those type players where when we get to golf courses, you're like, this is their course. Not to say they can't do good out here. This isn't their style course.
Yeah, I would agree.
This is definitely a more controlled placement shot type of golf, which I think caters to a few specific players. But before we get into too many specific storylines, I want to think of this event kind of as a whole. We've talked about this a few different times, but Brody actually on debate night, which will come out this afternoon if you haven't listened yet, you haven't. He brought up an interesting point, because what we've always talked about is U.S. women's. On the pro side, you have Throw Pink women's that happens at the same time as USDGC.
Kristin has gotten to that number 25 under a few times this year.
Okay. USDGC has Throw Pink women's that runs alongside it. Because of that being a major, and historically, this event has been a little lackluster in the way it's been treated.
Yeah.
If you remember some things that happened, I believe it was last year. This year, the course looks beautiful, well manicured. It was put in specifically for this event. I know the local disc golf scene down there is very active, very excited for this event. So I don't feel like that's going to be a problem necessarily this year. Because remember, Paige Pierce was always at, like, there was times 2 years ago, I think, where they showed up and there's like crisscrossing fairways, and Paige would go on Instagram and just tear the PDGA apart, rightfully so.
Yeah.
For a lot of that led to us saying, why are we doing this? You have a perfectly ran event at USDGC with Throw Pink women's going on next to it. That should be the U.S. women's. Brody's side point was, hey, we're trying to grow the FPO side. We're trying to make the FPO tour be more sustainable, because eventually I don't think this is a pretty common sense thing. If the FPO tour grows and MPO tour keeps growing, eventually they can't coexist at the same place. It just logistically won't be possible.
Right.
So in order for that to happen, eventually the FPO and MPO tour will have to split, and then one of the two tours will have to create all new events. So Brody's point was basically like, U.S. women's is an event where at least like if the FPO tour splits, we'll already have history built up. It's kind of like looking towards the future, and it's a good test. Is kind of how Brody's mind came at it. We've always come at it from the standpoint of like, we want more viewers, we want more people on the grounds. The easiest way to do that is at USDGC. They have the infrastructure, they have the ticket sales, they have all the eyeballs going on that weekend. Having FPO there is good for exposure. What do you think? Should this event stay separate, or do you still like the idea of moving it to USDGC?
Well, yeah, I think it's like kind of there's kind of three ways to look at it. So one is what you mentioned, where it's like, okay, maybe we should have just at least this one event that's just FPO that we can just, it's a good way to gauge where FPO viewership is at and how far that's progressed, because it's kind of just like a little bit of a litmus test each year. So I think that that's a good thing. Now, the other thing with moving it to USDGC, there's two problems with that. Number one, the PDGA would have to hand over ownership of a major.
Yes.
They don't want to do that. Nobody who owns a major wants to give up said major. Like, that's just a thing. And then number two, I think there may be a little bit of like spite involved, because USDGC for the longest time did not offer a women's championship. So maybe they don't want to hand it over, because it's like, well, you didn't offer a women's flight for the longest time. Like, you don't get to have the major. From a fan perspective and from like what is the most fun to watch, I think it would make the most sense for it to be there. But that's more of a short-term view, because you have to remember that USDGC, even for the men, will move eventually. So it would be a short-term play to move the women there and, just kind of harness everything else. And, to be fair, at least they are still playing there. We joke around and call Throw Pink Women's a major in our hearts, because it does still feel like it. We still get all the best players still go there, and any spectator that goes to USDGC still gets to see a really high-quality women's event. So it's just the major title thing. But I think long-term it makes sense to have this one event on its own for now to build it up. I'm just curious to see, like you said, it's been lackluster in past years. We've seen them not plan really well, and then we've seen courses that just like didn't really reflect what a major should be. We had that pitch and putt.
Yeah.
I think this year looks pretty promising. The course looks pretty cool. Carolina, I think they're kind of trying to stick to that area. I guess it makes sense with the tour being here. It'll probably stay East Coast, unless they change the time of the year it is. But yeah, I think it's fine the way it is. I think they just need to like really, this is the only event all year long that is just women at this level. So like they really need to just like lean into it and put all their eggs in a basket here and like just go for it and make it something that like is super exciting and cool. But yeah, that's kind of what I think about it.
Yeah, I think I would tend to agree on most of the points you made there, because I think the tough part with USDGC is, like you said, they're running a major for the MPO side. So the course conditions, all of the vending, the atmosphere is all major level, even though for FPO it is just an A tier.
Yeah.
The other thing that separates Throw Pink Women's is the qualification process all year. You have to earn your way there. So even the players who get there,
it is
they
weird.
have a chip on their shoulder because they feel they've earned their spot at this event.
It's almost like they should just have a fifth major at this point, because like if you ask them, like if you're an FPO competitor, you are going to. That's probably the event you look forward to the most all year as far as the environment you're playing in. There's so many fans, like all the infrastructure, the player exclusive parking and practice areas. Like they do everything really professionally. And the qualifying thing, I didn't even think about that. That's the weirdest part. And then it's just an A tier.
Yeah, well, even the payout a lot of times matches major level.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of where the line gets blurry. But obviously U.S. Women's, we're just talking the FPO side. One of the things where U.S. Women's, and this would be the interesting part, is right now what U.S. Women's is you have juniors all the way through like grandmasters all playing in a major. And we obviously have like the women's global event and all stuff like that. But this is like a major weekend, basically a celebration of women's disc golf.
Yeah.
So the FPO side, you're thinking from, USDGC exists, Throw Pink Women's is there. That side, like, it makes sense short term, but you would lose a lot of the fanfare and everything around US Women's if you removed FPO out, which I think is another downside. So I think I flipped my opinion on it. I think I agree with what Brody said in debate night, which is I think this should continue on, because I think, as he said, and I've made this point before, the FPO Tour will eventually split from the MPO Tour, assuming disc golf continues to grow.
Yeah.
And it'll be good when that happens to have, because then FPO at that point will have separate majors, separate everything. And it would be good when that happens to have an event like US Women's that already has history.
Yeah.
So you do have to like that. And speaking of some of this history, we have Kristin Tattar with a chance to make some this weekend. She has a chance to do something that no other FPO player has ever done. I just saw that stat this morning. I knew we were talking about like Kristin compared to Paige Pierce, who unfortunately will not be there this weekend. And we knew Paige Pierce hadn't done it. I didn't realize no FPO player ever had, which is crazy to me when you think back to Des Redding, Valerie Jenkins, Elaine King. We've had Juliana Korver. There's so many greats. To think that none of them swept the majors in a season,
Yeah.
to be quite frank with you, doesn't seem right. But Statmando put it out there, and I trust Statmando with my life.
It speaks to the consistency.
So Kristin has a chance to make history and add a line to her GOAT resume, because now she has a line that separates her from everyone else. Right now, it's building accolades that everyone else already has.
Yeah.
This would be an accolade that, hey, no one has touched this before. Yeah. So this event is much bigger than just the title for Kristin. She already has one U.S. Women's title. This would make her a two-time U.S. Women champ. But the Grand Slam in a season, how much do you think that is weighing on her coming into this weekend?
I think probably a good bit. It's it's the Tiger Slam. I think Tiger won them all in like a calendar year in succession or something like that. But like you don't really hear about this in sports, like winning all of the majors. It's pretty insane. And you're right. This would be like a very big part of Kristin's GOAT argument, essentially, because you can say, well, yeah, she may not have had as much time to collect these accolades, but like here is like a very clear thing that she did in her career that nobody else was able to do. Like, and that's huge. Winning all the majors in one season is insane. I think there will be a lot of pressure. Obviously, she's still my favorite. That's just going to be how it is because she's just shown the consistency all year. But I certainly think that's a high. It gets to the point when you're Kristin and you're winning everything. Only those really special accolades are going to probably apply a lot of pressure, and this would be one. But I think she's probably felt that at all the majors this year. You know, she's expected to win them, and those are the most important ones for her to be collecting at this point, and she's delivered 3 times, but this will be the hardest one.
No, definitely. And, you know, it's something where sometimes you get to a moment in sports and you're always wondering, like, does the player know what they're trying to do? Like, is the player aware? There's no question here
aware, yeah.
Because, I mean, Latitude 64 posted like a short little interview with her.
Well, they probably already stamped her.
They might have already done that.
The Kristin Slam disc.
They might have already done that.
Holding it at the podium.
But the caption was basically saying, like, let's all root on Kristin as she goes on, as she is attempting to do something no other player has ever done. So there's no question she knows what this is worth.
Yeah.
And like I said, she has that additional pressure of it's not just a major title. It's not just an accolade. There's so much more to this. Now, according to UDisc, Kristin's biggest competition this weekend is Owen Scoggins, according to the percentage chance to win. Looking at the course, I might have to agree with them.
Agree, yeah.
What do you think of Owen on this course and her chances in general this weekend?
I think I really like Owen's chances. I have a suspicion that she could be very competitive. We saw it at MVP last weekend. You put Owen in the woods. You take some of the length out of the equation, and I think that both those things are going to happen here. She's going to be dangerous. I think that she's going to set a bar like she always does, and it's going to be up to somebody like Kristin or Haley King to beat her, maybe a Missy Gannon. But anytime you get in the woods and you remove a lot of distance from the course, Owen Scoggins has every opportunity to win a major. Yeah,
it's definitely an interesting one because Owen Scoggins put herself in a position at MVP, and unfortunately, I believe it was hole 11, we saw her very uncharacteristically 3 or 4 putt to end up taking a 7 on that hole. And that is what ended up costing her. Yeah. Because she got herself back in position to a tie for second with Kristin, 1 stroke behind Haley, who ended up winning MVP. If she just makes, and one of them was like a 15-footer, like super, I've never seen Owen Scoggins do this type thing.
Yeah, very weird.
If she just does what she normally does, she wins MVP by 3 or 4. You do have to wonder, because at that point I think she had the solo lead, or she knew she was in contention. You do have to wonder how much of that was the pressure coming in. Yeah. And that is something where 4 rounds, major level golf, it's a pressure cooker out there. And so if you're someone like Owen Scoggins, Kristin Tattar, we expect Haley King to be in this, we expect a Missy Gannon to be in this. If you're one of those players who is probably going to be in it from round 1, the pressure's just going to build. Because there is an advantage realistically to coming out there semi-flat round 1 and then playing hungry round 2 and 3 to get yourself back in at round 4, and you only have one round where all eyes are on you under pressure, versus coming out hot, coming out where you're in second or third, where I would expect Owens Goggins to come out, and now you're under pressure all 4 rounds. It just builds and builds and builds. And the major title, you're going to sleep the night before thinking, I've got a real shot at this. You got to sleep with that. And you wake up in the morning. It'll be interesting to see how that weighs on someone like Owen, who obviously has won now. We can't say that anymore. Mm-hmm. But this level's a different level. She has won majors, but on the FP40 side. FPO major is a whole different pressure level.
Yeah.
Now, you did mention Haley King coming in as a defending champ here. This course is an interesting one for Haley, but with her mindset from MVP, if she carries that mindset in, you got to think she has a solid chance. What are you thinking of Haley coming into this weekend?
I like Haley King a lot at this event. Obviously, she's the defending champ. Much different course last year.
Yes.
So I'm not really taking a ton of stock in that, but coming off a convincing win at a wooded course, like you said, that certainly helps. And I think when Haley has confidence, momentum, and a sound game plan, she can be very dangerous. I think her game's kind of clicking right now. So I think that she's probably the biggest challenger to Kristin. And it could be her serious. Haley King is set up, in my opinion, for a potentially very good end of this season. Because I like her at this event, and I'd have to like her at the Tour Championship as well. Throw pink, who knows? But I think that she could really make a splash at the end of the season here.
When I was looking at this course, I was watching the flyovers and looking at the course map, and I was thinking, this is a very much placement golf, pick your battles. And why typically that makes me go Kristin Tattar all day? Because what happens with a player like Haley King historically, I feel like, is when she's in contention versus not in contention, is basically like, is her game clicking because she's playing aggressive? Almost like a Simon Lizotte type of a player. But what we've seen is it's like a new Simon is what Haley King stepped into at MVP, where she was talking in interviews and she was like, what my game plan was out here was basically, I'm going for pars. I'm going to let other players mess up.
Yeah.
And that's what Kristin's been doing. It's the Kristin Tattar mindset.
The sooner you figure that out in FPO right now, the better.
Yeah. So if Haley King, who just won with that mindset, you don't think she's switching mindsets coming into this weekend, and with the amount of distance she has and the amount of control she showed at MVP, when she's stepping up to some of these holes, if she's, instead of thinking, I could eagle this, but hey, I can birdie this all 4 rounds if I just go chip, 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 you got to really like her out there, and her putts seem to be on as well. There was some talk of Kristin gave away MVP versus Haley took it, and we had mentioned both are true. Yeah. Kristin gave it away, but Haley had to birdie 3 of the last 4, I think 4 of the last 7 or something like that to take MVP down. Haley King could realistically take this from Kristin. Typically, we're talking Kristin's the only person that can beat Kristin. Mm-hmm. Haley King has swayed me a little bit with MVP. I think if Haley King goes out there, applies the pressure early, and keeps the pressure on and plays her game of, I'm playing for par, and I'm going to take advantage when other players mess up, Kristin Tattar has shown she will mess up at some point.
Yeah.
If they're both playing the same game and they're both playing at the same level, it's basically going to be which one messes up first or which one messes up worse. So if Haley King's able to do that, I really like her chances out there this weekend. I think that she could stop history from happening.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess you can look at it 2 different ways, but as a competitor, if I'm going against Kristin Tattar, and I've heard the media all year talk about how Kristin Tattar is untouchable, she's the GOAT, no one's ever seen anything like this, no one can stop her in FPO, blah, blah, blah. All I want to do is stop history from happening. I want to shut everyone up and be like, oh, Kristin's your GOAT?
I want to say contract year for Haley as well. I think she only signed a 1-year deal.
I believe she did. It was I don't think that was official. Okay. I think it was kind of like speculated because it wasn't, not a lot of details were announced, but could be, speculation was it was a 1-year deal with Innova.
Could be just win a major, close the season, homecoming deal to Discraft, 10 years, 10 mil.
this could be a very, very big career and season moment for Haley King. Obviously, no one's getting into the Player of the Year talk over Kristin. It's done. It's a done deal.
It's been done for a month or so.
But if Haley realistically wins MVP, if she wins here, Throw Pink Women's is anyone's ball game.
Yeah.
She has the distance to win there. And then, like you said, Tour Championship.
A lot of money.
You got to like her opportunity there. I mean, it's unfathomable what I just talked about, but if she closes the season with 4 wins, we go into the offseason with a lot more uncertainty than we thought.
Yeah.
There's still no question as to who had the player of the year, but there's question of, hey, going into the next year, are we going to see Kristin's reign continue?
Been waiting for a long time for Haley King to like step up and become a more dominant force, because I think she is very athletic. I think she has a ton of skill, and you find that if she can find that recipe for success and stick to it, because there is a recipe for winning in the FPO division right now, and if she can figure it out and stick to it, she can win a lot.
Yeah, and she has a chance to make a big statement this weekend. Now, Missy Gannon, typically I look at a course like this, I'm typically like, this is a Missy Gannon type course. I like it. I thought that about MVP. She didn't quite perform to the level I expected, because I was expecting her to be in contention. What do we think of Missy's game coming into this weekend, coming into this course? Missy was on a really good stretch there for a while this season, leading up to MVP. I omitted her from my top 3, but I immediately was like, probably going to regret that. Luckily didn't, but I still, it's kind of just which Missy are we going to see? Is she going to be putting well, hitting those lines? When Missy's game is on, she'll be competitive. I imagine, knowing Missy Gannon, she'll probably show up and win the tour championship, because, whenever big money Missy.
But I don't know. Missy is never going to surprise me in the top 3. But she does can have some really bad weekends too as well. So I don't know. I'm a little more wavering than I was leading into MVP. I'm not necessarily super confident.
I'm in the same exact boat. I won't be surprised if she's up there. I won't be surprised if she's in contention, but I'm not expecting it. I didn't put her in my top 3 this weekend, and I don't know. There's also something about this course. Missy Gannon likes to lean on that thrasher a lot, and I feel like off the tee here, from me looking at it, now some of the open holes, definitely, it's a Missy Thrasher all day, because there's not a lot of trouble and she can just rip it as much as she wants. But some of the wooded holes, it seemed like more mid and putter placement shots than what we see a lot of times, which is like for FPO driver placement shots, which is where that Thrasher really shines. I don't know, something about it, it looked like a deceptive course where you would think it's a Missy Gannon course, but I don't think she's going to play well at it. I could be completely wrong there. I just got this little feeling. So,
okay.
Final player I want to talk about here, Valerie Mandujano. Hasn't been a player, I feel like I bring her up most weekends, but hasn't really been a player there's been a lot of storylines on. She got the win this year at Idlewild. This is a course, again, where I think she could play very well out here. I think this course could play very well to her strengths, but we haven't really seen it that much this year. A major win towards the end of the season could put a big exclamation mark on a season that started rocky with that ankle injury that we never knew when she was coming back from.
Yeah.
We're dealing with only like half a season here from Valerie Mandujano. Again, it could be a good momentum going into the offseason type win. What is she going to have to execute on to take it down this weekend?
Yeah, just going to have to, whenever she got the win at Idlewild, I was kind of like, okay, was able to shake off the rust a lot quicker than I expected.
Yeah.
This is great. Haven't really seen that again. I think that there's just a lot of difficulty in getting that game back into shape after the injury. I think it'd be great if she could pick up a win, get some momentum, and just like at this point, it's like, okay, we need to get into the offseason and reset. If you're Valerie Mandujano, just like focus on the game, get ready for next season, and get a whole season under your belt again. It's tough to jump straight into a season and have success. So I think a win would be an incredible bonus. But I think she has to keep her expectations, and I know she's very competitive, but you got to keep those expectations somewhat low, play your game, and just get to the offseason and reset from there at this point. I don't expect, but then again, she's already won this year, so it's FPO. Anything can happen.
I think for Valerie, if she wants to be in contention, it's going to really come down to her on the putting green.
Yeah.
Because I think this course, it looks like there's going to be a lot of opportunities to score, and you have to capitalize on them. So I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunities in Circle 2, in Circle 1, but like long Circle 1 putts, where I think if she is able to execute on those, I think her drives and her approach game is going to get her into spots where she can execute. It's just a question of like, will she be making those tester putts that get her bonus birdies or saving par? So I think it's all going to come down to her putt, but I agree. I think at this point, she made it through the season. Her ankles, well, she hasn't technically yet because she's still the tour championship, but this is kind of the we have USWDGC, Throw Pink Women being only an 8 tier. This is like the end cap to the FPO season, and then we have USDGC, the end cap to the MPO season going into the tour championship. So she's made it. She's here. I think just try to finish the season on a strong note, but no, I'm going to the offseason to get my game back to where it was and hopefully even better than what it used to be so that coming into next year I can really make some noise. So it would be exciting to see her in contention here, but again, not a player that I'm expecting a ton out of this weekend. It's really the big storyline to end it all up, wrap it all up, is Kristin Tattar's chance at history here and how much that weighs on her. It's going to be a very exciting weekend of disc golf to watch out there. We're going to get into some of our predictions here. Point standings coming into this weekend. I'm at 114 points, and Trevor extended his lead a little bit last week. He's now at 117 points. With it being a major, points are worth double, so there's 18 points on the table right now because if you pick up first, second, third, right, that's 6 points each. That's 18 points. We're obviously only going to pick the FPO top 3 because normally we do Dark Horse and MPO as well, but with no MPO field, so we just got FPO top 3. So Trevor, what's your FPO top 3 looking like?
Pretty chalky. Gonna take Kristin to win. She could be dethroned, but got to go with literally have to go with statistics as far as like she has statistically won more than 50% of the time this year. I think.
UDisc gives her, I think it was a 76% chance of winning this weekend, and the next highest was like 5%, I think.
But I will take Haley King in second.
Okay.
I do expect her to challenge again, and then somebody who actually I think this person has the best chance of winning besides Kristin. That's Owen Scoggins. So I'm taking a third. We
have the same people in the top 3, but in a different order.
Okay.
I've got Kristin Tattar winning. I put Owen Scoggins in second, Haley King third.
I don't hate that.
A similar mindset. Those are the 3 players I think have the best chance of winning. I want them in my top 3.
Could be could be 3-point swing, or it could be 4-point swings.
4. Yeah. Why I put Owen second is I feel like Haley's either going to win it or not be in contention.
That's fair.
And I feel like Owen Scoggins holds on to that second place a lot.
Not the new Haley.
It'll be interesting. I put her in my top 3, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. But
Missy will probably win now.
Probably. Get out there, watch the U.S. Women's this weekend, live on DGN. Jomez, it starts today. 4 rounds of disc golf ahead, all at the regulator. It's going to be a great weekend of disc golf. And like I said, we're witnessing possible history be made with Kristin Tattar here. So if you're a disc golf fan, this is something where you can know exactly where you were at when she made her final putt to secure history, or know where you were at when Haley King stopped her from doing it. Whatever happens, we'll talk about it Monday on Grip Locked, and we'll see you then.